I'm speaking here with Jamie Birch, entrepreneur extraordinaire.
Thank
Do you want to
you.
say, talk for 30 seconds or so, a minute about who you are and what you do?
My name is Jamie Birch. I run a marketing agency, JEB Commerce, and I'm a partner in uh, adults with developmental disabilities agency called Renewed Horizons. I'm 43. I have 4 kids, 2 out of the house, 2 still in. Leader in my church. I like horses. I like downtime.
Mhm.
I'm a budding woodworking CNCer. And who I really am is I love to be a part of people changing their lives and learning about themselves and growing. And I use my businesses uh, to be a part of that with more people.
Mhm. And you know what? You sort of skipped right to the end in a way, and I want to highlight that.
Okay.
Your orientation toward change and personal growth is, I think, the single most important factor for how successful you've been in change.
Yeah, I think I'd agree on that, and I think that's genetic in a way.
Yes.
Explain that. My dad has been in leadership and management for his entire career, and I grew up with entrepreneur magazines and leadership books, all throughout the house. And my dad had the entire family do various different personalysis tests,
Hmm.
and so I was predisposed from an early age to change. It's a thing that I was interviewed in a paper, and they asked me one thing my dad used to say, and it had to do with like cultural change. And the journalist laughed just like that. He's like, "What?" I was thinking something like, "Don't take any wooden nickels," or you know, uh, but like you guys talked about that, and yeah, we did. We talked about business all the time, and about people changing and looking at yourself. So um, I would say that I was predisposed to that, and it's something. I was listening to a song. I think it's by Seether. It's I was put a playlist on the other day, someone else's playlist while I was riding my bike, and this like hardcore metal screamo kind of thing came on. But I've wanted to share it with you because the couple words that I could hear was everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to change themselves.
Mm.
And so, through my upbringing, also my faith, the Bible, Christ talks a lot about examining yourself
Hmm.
and becoming more like Him. Well, you got to kind of know where you are to get there. So, yeah, change sucks sometimes, but getting through the other side, looking back, it's good to do that every once in a while because the trials and tribulations don't change; they're always
Yeah.
there. But
Yeah.
how you relate to them
Yeah.
is a big thing that changes.
Yeah, I think so. I'm so glad that this came out first because what you're saying here is that you had an orientation and even a childhood conditioning toward change. And that's something most of the people I work with, I have to recondition them to embrace change so that they can even begin to change. And that wasn't so much the case with you at all. You already had an orientation toward it. And I also want to highlight what you said about change sucks, because I think a lot of people think that they have to like change in order to embrace it. And that's actually a stopgap for a lot of people. You don't have to like it. You have to surrender to it.
Yeah, it is.
Exactly. It's sort of like you don't have to like that it's a rainy day, but you'd better surrender to it and grab your umbrella or else you're going to get all wet. You don't have to like it. You just have to,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, and I think that's one of the things. Looking back, of like these are the conditions,
Yeah.
and may have heard that from you. Um, I think I've definitely heard it from you. I've heard it other places,
Yeah.
but I remember and even now, like even this morning driving into work, as my head was spinning, we talked about earlier,
Mm-hmm.
that phrase came to mind. I'm like, these are the conditions.
Yeah, that's what you're inside of. Now, what are you going to do? Are you going to keep expending your energy battling the conditions that you're in, or are you
Yeah.
going to start working inside them?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's probably the biggest advantage I had, growing up,
Mm-hmm.
outside of the genetic lottery of, where I live, where I was born, color, all that, is that willingness to look inside. And I think, like, I was thinking about what's the biggest part of the change that's happened, and it's that really realizing I'm my biggest bottleneck,
Mm.
and the concept of what you need to learn to grow isn't constructive, but what do you call it? Destructive,
Deconstructive.
deconstructive,
Mm.
of stuff you have to let go. And looking at all the things that I've been working at letting go, some very successful early on, some took me a long time to get to. I don't think me at 35 would know who the hell Jamie at 43 is, or even recognize him.
You mean you were unrecognizable to yourself?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
And we always, like, you hear people, I need to go find myself.
Mm-hmm.
And from my background, that's just a bunch of hippie bullshit, right? You're like, whatever, you're right there. Where are you going to look for? But
Mm.
you do build up so much stuff around you to get through certain things in life,
Mm-hmm.
and you never let any of that go. Like, that's an intentional act of discovering, what you should let go and you don't need anymore.
Yeah, like
And
like clothing. Like if you never throw out any of your old clothes, then your closet gets
yeah,
full
that's
because
it.
you keep acquiring new stuff.
And putting it on. Yeah.
And yeah, and people do that even with,
Yeah.
that the metaphor holds true. People do that with closets and they have a hard time letting go of stuff, much
Yeah.
less qualities of being that they think are themselves.
Yeah.
Way, way harder. So what were some of the things that you let go in no particular order?
Oh, gosh. I think one of the biggest things was my image. And I still work on this. I did a lot of things for people I don't know or I don't even like. And learning about my personality type. And so being comfortable. I used to have, this is like the biggest example of how I did that. I had a mudroom in our house, and in there were my uniforms. So when I was going to work out, work on my ranch, if I was chopping trees, I mean, I'm not lying. I had, like, this is what dudes who chop trees, fall trees, this is what they wear. And that was my Carhartts
Uh-huh.
and my work shirt and my work boots. And then when I went riding horses, this is what cowboys wear. And I'd have my uniform for that. And when we go to do stuff, I'm like, oh, wait, we're doing this. I got to go. What if someone, and I didn't even realize that this was the conversation in my head, but it was, well, what if someone sees me and I'm not wearing the right stuff, or I'm not on the right horse, or,
Hmm.
and so I put all this energy to managing my image. And I remember one of the first things we talked about was, well, who are you?
Mm.
And I was like, shut up. Who the hell are you? And I really had to think about that. And it was something that there's a skill to it. I moved around every 2 years. And so during those times, every school, we went from city schools to rural schools. And so I developed this knack of knowing what people would accept, and becoming that. So
Yeah.
when I was in a cow town, Wranglers and cowboy boots.
Yeah, it was a strategy. It was a survival and socialization strategy for you.
Totally. And during high school in a big city in Seattle, when grunge was out, that's who I was.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a a really cool strength, and I can really quickly pick out like what people need and what they would accept. And doing that intentionally is way different than not knowing that's happening and having to adapt to every environment. Is exhausting.
And of course, that skill is the basis of marketing, right? Like that's why you're good at what you do.
Yeah. I'm really good at what I do. Yeah. So that was probably the first thing, of like just realizing how much energy I put into being all these different things, these different people. And then letting that go. And you know what? If I'm wearing a suit and my horse is ready, you will totally see me rocking a suit, riding my horse. I don't care.
That's an amazing image, actually.
Yeah. It's an old song, a cowboy in a continental suit. So I don't, it's not a big deal anymore. If I want to be comfortable, I'll be comfortable. And if that happens to be sneakers on my horse or dress, I've ridden in my dress shoes before because I didn't have time to change and I had a ball.
Whereas before that would have held you back because you were going from the outside in.
Yeah. Not only held me back, but it drives everyone in my family nuts too. Because they could see, my wife could see probably more than anybody, of how important that was. And it was teaching my kids not adaptability, but, conformism and just bending myself to whoever. And I had a really good capability to do that anywhere. And so, yeah, it was exhausting, but it take away from them too, because we couldn't do things because I couldn't find, I remember my wife and I got in an argument because I couldn't find my ski socks, socks that no one will see. They're in ski.
But the right socks for the job.
They had to be. This even came, so like one thing I learned is you let these things go in a way, but there's an intentionality of making sure they don't come back, and they can come up easily. Yesterday I was cooking a scramble with tofu, and I like my tofu. I get a certain kind. We didn't have that, and my wife and I got in an argument because we didn't have the right tofu, and it's all wrapped up in that. Those things they do come up from time to time, but the more you do let them go, you can use those skills when you need them, but you don't always need them.
Yeah. And how has this letting go affected you in your business?
Oh, well, I spend a lot less time wondering what my competitors are doing and how they would look at me for all my failures. And if you've run a business, you have a long track record of those. And so I think the biggest area would be, I wouldn't really look at the areas of my business and my leadership that were a problem, because that would affect my image. So, one of the first things you and I worked on was financial reporting. I never really had any. And after now having the most detailed financial reports, I know, not only do I know where all the money is, but I know how to check, and I have a process to check and make sure we're on the right track and all of that, like better than ever. And having that and looking back, I can see that I knew there were areas I wasn't taking care of. Things I wasn't taking care of. And I didn't want to look, because I was already dealing with obstacles and failures and things. And I kept thinking like, man, my competitors, this peer group, they've never dealt with these issues. I see their Facebook and everything looks amazing.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks amazing.
Everybody's doing great, aren't they?
Yeah, everyone's doing great, and they never have any financial problems.
No.
So I don't want to look at it in fear, worried about my fear is true. And then somehow they're all going to find out and pounce on my business, and I'll lose everything. And gosh, if I lose everything, who am I then? If I'm not an entrepreneur extraordinaire, a successful businessman, a leader in my community, wealthy and all of that. Like, so it kept me from finding the truth.
Wow, you just said so much. I want to highlight that. You just listed a number of different assumptions about yourself, image-based needs, and stories that were all in the way of you doing something as simple, not necessarily easy, but as simple as really looking at your numbers carefully.
Yes.
All of that was in the way.
All
And
of that. Yeah.
because all of that stuff was more important than the truth.
Yeah. And that, you know, if you're hungry for the truth, nothing else matters.
Mm.
And you can make so much more headway.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, like the image thing kept me from looking at my finances, kept us from being in reality and knowing the truth on that. And we made some awful decisions, spent tens of thousands of dollars on things to uphold my image.
Mm.
Like, if I wasn't who I am today, that would really make me upset. Like, I really, that would get to my self-image. Like, oh my gosh, I'm the guy who worried about his self-image so much that the business, we made lots of decisions that were poor. But you know, it's good to go back and see that. But yeah, it kept me from looking in reality, in like every, you know, employees. Man,
To say the finance thing was like a loose thread on a shirt that when you pulled on it, unraveled lots of things. What were those things that ended up being unraveled?
one of the biggest ones is I have an immense capability to not hold myself or anyone accountable. Like superhero level.
Well, you're a really nice guy.
I am. Well,
You're a recovering nice guy.
I'm a recovering nice guy. What I used to do is I'd be super nice and not deal with stuff, and then I'd have enough and I'd freak out.
Oh, yes.
And then there'd be collateral damage all over the place. People get fired when they should have, you know, they either should never have been hired, or they should have been
warned and had time.
Warned
that's actually really common, as you know. That's what most managers do.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, it affects so much. Like when you run a business, and we had 26 our best year. That's a lot of families, and that concept again of you're the bottleneck in your business, and the business is going to grow as far as you grow. Like, that's a lot of weight. And I can't see how any business is successful if their leader isn't willing to change and adapt and grow.
Is what you're saying here is there were a lot of problems in your business that the way in which you were a bottleneck was you weren't willing to really look at the truth. And then when you were able to look at the truth and allow it to change you, it revealed to you what was true about money, what was true about your employees, what was true about even a segment of your business entirely.
Yeah. And it's amazing. And part of it was I didn't want to look at my financial reports because I didn't understand them. Mm-hmm. And I have a degree in finance. So let that simmer.
You're, quote, supposed to know, right? If your education had actually served you, then
if it was worth
your fault.
Yeah, if it's worth the payment I'm still making, then I would have. Yeah, right. I would have been able to see this, but you know, now looking back, like, you know, much more grace given to that guy because my school didn't teach me anything about that. I mean, I graduated with a pretty good GPA in finance, and I couldn't tell you what a P&L, balance sheet, all that stuff, cash flow statement, I didn't even have. Like, I could not tell you any of those things. And like you said, when you started to pull on that string, that, like, I can look at a P&L now. I can look at my other business's P&L, and I can see what's going on in the business. and I can look, well, we didn't have P&Ls back then, but I can look at mine now and I can see what's going on in the business. And so, yeah, you start to pull on that thread, and then you see, well, I wasn't holding myself accountable to my finances in the business or at home. Then you can see, like, man, we have too many people, and I'm not holding these people accountable. And you can see revenue go up and down because we're not holding those people accountable. And then when you just start to see, like, so it was the financial reports, it was development of my employees. We weren't really doing anything. There were fun stuff we were doing, but nothing intentional to grow the individuals here and the team. And then there were people who should never have been here. Our hiring process was awful. What I saw in that is I want to help everybody. Like, I can get all of my value out of if I gave people good advice and they accepted it and they were successful. And so now I can see interviewees when they come in. I'll recuse myself from an interview process if I just want to help that person so bad.
Wow.
I will, if I can't get a hold of it and make a objective decision, then I will actually pull myself out. And we've got, and those people are everywhere. A lot of people who are looking for work in in an economy that's at full employment.
Yeah.
They're unemployed for a reason.
Yeah.
And I just, deep down, I want to help those people. I had so many advantages growing up, and I want to give that to everybody.
So I want to highlight this because this is really important, because a lot of people misunderstand how this works. What you're saying is the pattern of wanting to help people is still there. You're just aware of that itch, so that when you feel it spilling over and might influence your actions, you stop yourself. And in this case, recuse yourself from the interviewing process.
Yeah, exactly.
That's self-awareness.
So I still want to help. And there's been a story that accountability is mean. Yes. And I've had to break that down, both in raising my children and in growing this company. When I let that story take hold, then I wouldn't hold people accountable. And some of my staff even had a term for it. And it was, I think they called it the accountability cliff.
Where you would say nothing and then suddenly.
And then you're done. You're dead to me. Get out of here.
Like an ambush.
Complete ambush. And so I had to learn, like, accountability is a gift. And in all these areas. And I swung from no accountability to super accountability, and that became micromanagement. And then, you just kind of feel your way and you settle in of what every person needs. And like you said, I know that I want to help everybody. Like, I really do want to help everybody. Like, if I could, that'd be great. But I also have seen how I can do that at the detriment of my own health, physical, emotional, spiritual health. I can do it at the cost of my family, and I can do it at the cost of the business. At the end of the day, I can't help people the way that I feel, is my purpose here, if I can't hold people accountable. If JEB wasn't growing, I couldn't invest in the second business and impact another 35 people. Yeah. And if I wasn't holding people accountable in both of these businesses, I wouldn't be able to right now be planning what's the next business where I get to do that. And so, that story, and like you said, there's so many stories that I've had to deconstruct, at least acknowledge that they're going on. But that is the big one. Accountability is mean. And everyone loved working for me until they didn't.
Until,
I mean,
well, for many of them, until you started to hold up a mirror and hold them accountable to metrics, you turned over a fair amount of staff. Yeah.
like 65% of staff
Hmm.
in 18 months,
Yeah.
I think is probably accurate when we started to hold everyone accountable. And yeah, people, every time we've made a change, and every time I've made a change in this process, and I think we started working together 5 years ago.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Every time I made significant improvement, or became aware of a story, or became more accountable, or anything. Every time we did that, not everyone made the turn.
Yeah.
And then when I really figured out, like, oh crap, this accountability thing is a major story in my life,
Hmm.
and it's impacting. Actually, it's probably quicker to say the things that's not impacting.
Yeah.
It just impacted so much. When we made that change, it was rapid,
Hmm.
where we turned over a lot of people, and that was surprising, just because some of the people who I thought were totally engaged, totally with it, weren't.
Yeah. Me
They
too.
just weren't.
Some of them were fooling me too. Not that I'm infallible or something, but usually being on the outside, I have a keener eye. But you had some really key people who were saying all the right things to look engaged and turned out we're not. That
Yeah.
surprised me.
And the thing that weeded that out is accountability.
Yeah.
We're going to do excellent work. Here's the definition of that.
Hmm.
And we're going to check on how we're doing
Hmm.
regularly. And if not, we're going to, the tool, the course and the tool that we use that you taught us, the accountability path, has probably been, there are three that we employ, and now I teach here. The accountability path is one, and I love it because I have a problem with accountability. So having a path is, it's I get to lean on that now, and it helps me identify where my proclivity to not hold someone accountable, but being able to clearly go. The notice, I love the notice, just because I like. I respond to the notice. Like, if I had a boss, and they just noticed that I was late, I would never be late again.
Mm.
And just seeing how many people have to go from that, and raise the temperature to the line, you get to really learn about people. There are some people here who I could notice something that they were doing wrong inside my head, never say it out loud. They could feel it and they would adjust and change. And there were others where we had to get down to that line, that last part of the path of, like, if this doesn't happen by this date, you will be working somewhere else.
Yeah, the accountability path was the antidote to the accountability cliff that was installed before us.
Yeah. It was a nice little path down to you're no longer here. And along that path are many, many paths to get back up to where you need to
Yeah,
go.
right.
Yeah. And that was a great, it was just a great way to make sure that people weren't surprised. Like, I've always told my staff, you won't be surprised when you're let go. Like, this is a process. And I've said that for the 14 years I've run this business. It wasn't true until we learned the accountability path.
But it was a great intention.
Oh, great intention.
Yeah.
And people, when they got hired, they'd love it. And some people left because they saw it was bullshit.
Mm.
But that path also gives everyone, we really recently let someone go. And the one question all the new people had was, hey, how do I know I'm not going to lose my job? And I was like, that's a really good question.
Totally.
So we taught the accountability path right there. And I said, you won't be surprised. You have these steps. One of them, you get something in writing. We made some additions to it. You're going to get this in writing. You're going to have a plan. And then you have a meeting where we let you know that if this doesn't change, the next meeting, we're going to be talking about your termination date. And what you need to do to avoid that. So outlined all that, and it made everyone feel very comfortable and they're not going to be ambushed. They're not going to be surprised.
Nice.
With that, the other thing that I've had to let go is, like, I love to solve problems, and so I'll jump right to the solution before I know what the hell the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other course, the CLEAR, the acronym.
Clear the issue, yeah.
Clear the issue. I'd say 9 out of 10 times we're solving problems that weren't the problem.
Very common.
We're putting skin cream on the acne instead of fixing our diet.
Mm.
We were creating development plans for staff that should never have been here.
Wow.
We were trying to figure out how to get more money from a small client when we should have been figuring out how to not ever let them in.
Mm.
And so that process really helped us identify some of the problems. It also helped identify that accountability was an issue for me. In that story. So those two courses, have been instrumental. We teach them here. And every time we do them, people are solving a more meta issue, a bigger domino than they would have. And it's amazing now that I know that, to watch people go from, I think there's a problem, into this is how we solve it.
Mm.
And there's no space into, okay, what's actually going on? And I teach a tech class for my kids. They're homeschooled. And I think I remember showing you pictures. I taught them the CLEAR method because one of the things we were building wasn't working right. And so we went through the whole process, and they really enjoyed that, and it helped find the right issue. So those are the two big things.
And the third one, Clear Workspace, yeah.
Yeah, Clear Workspace and Open Mind. That one, and I'm not going to show you what my desk looks like today, but it's early on Monday. But that and the whole, we took that and a bunch of other things we've learned by going through that course and the excellence course into a document on how we battle overwhelm. Mm. So there's a lot of stories we tell, the accountability thing, and then like more practical of the way we work, like seeing how often, like I had a huge anxiety problem. I would worry about, what do my competitors think if they only knew how bad my finances were and how much I don't know what the hell's going on. What if this client leaves? I caught myself when I was going through that course of hitting send and receive on my email and just looking at it.
Yeah, the anxiety in you is clicking send and receive, waiting for the other shoe to drop, right?
Totally. I'm waiting for the client email to come through. I'm waiting for a note from my CFO that we didn't get paid. A million different things are going through my head. And then I'd switch to Facebook, and then I'd see all of these great people doing amazing things. And all I can think about is, what if I don't make payroll? Kind of thing. And so changing the way we do email has had a dramatic effect. Touch it once, don't check it first thing. It's a tool to be used, not the end-all communication method. It's not your task manager. Using the calendar correctly, like actually using it.
How many hours do you think was saved in your company because of the course?
Oh, geez. I'd say 5 hours a week per person.
Wow.
That's probably conservative. Mm-hmm. If they work like I did. Now, there's some difference. Like, they have a lot more task things they have to respond to. I'm the CEO. I don't have to respond to anybody. Part of why I felt getting a coach was so valuable is I needed some sort of accountability from outside the organization. And I remember getting that from you. I remember one time throwing my phone. I wish I remember what that conversation was about. So they may have, I saw as a CEO, like if I wasn't engaged in tackling all these things, like the company was just going to flounder. And so I knew I was saving 5 hours a week. And then all the alerts off my phone. I took Facebook off my phone. I have no email on my phone. And making sure everyone kind of functions that way too. It saves time because we're not hitting send and receive all the time, but you're also focused on the work.
That's the open mind part. Yeah.
Yeah. You're not worried about, you're not reading the email 17 times before you respond to it. And I still catch people doing that here. And that frees things up. You deal with it when it comes in and you see it. And you don't think, oh, how am I going to respond to this client? Because client work can be brutal at times. And yeah, you can spend all day doing nothing.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Fretting about stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So in our final minutes here, because I want to respect your time, but I'm sure people will be curious to hear whatever before and after numbers, results, metrics that you'd be willing to share in terms of how things have changed. That's been our theme today, change.
So beforehand, Profit was a TV show.
What do you mean?
There's a TV show called The Prophet, and he helps people become profitable.
Oh.
That's what it was for us.
I see.
An abstract concept that they had discussed in college, but we didn't have. So we have now more cash on hand, more profit percentage, and more cash actually in the bank every month on 30% less sales than we did before all of this.
Wow. On 30% less sales, you've got more profit as a percentage and more cash in the bank.
Yeah, we operated as most American families do, one check away, from disaster, paycheck to paycheck. That's how we ran for the majority. And most businesses probably listening to this are doing the same thing. Doing that, we weren't investing in the company. We weren't holding things accountable. We had the wrong people, too many of the wrong people. And the money was going out the door. Because I wouldn't hold people accountable, I took loans out for payroll of people that aren't even here anymore and should never have done that. And now we're putting away, we have 5 months of complete operating expenses in our savings account. And I'd say April of 2017 is when we started getting a real good handle on our finances. And then January of this year is when we had it dialed in. It took us 9 months to fix what a former bookkeeper had kind of bungled. After we got all that fixed, it took 6 months to put away almost half a year of expenses for the business. And so that was all accountability, holding myself accountable. A lot of business owners will use their business as another checking account. So I definitely made that mistake. You have the wrong people and not hold them accountable. And you think, man, if I lost them, what would I do? Yeah, you'd find someone else, or you'd find out you don't need them, which we've done both. A lot more find out we didn't need them than find someone else. And we got lean. And so now if we lost a client, there's still part of me that wants to be like, see, it's all bullshit. And you got to go, all right, thanks for being there. You're going to make sure I'm holding myself accountable. I appreciate that. I got this. And then the rest of the actual me is like, we're in a really good spot. We've got great plans. How do I know? I've got my 20-page dashboard that tells me every department and how they're doing.
Wow.
And so I can go to the truth. And the truth sometimes is awful, but at least you got a good place to start from. And so we're in a much different place. We're planning travel a year in advance. We've never done that.
Wow.
We had, like I said, 5 months of operating cash. Our goal is to have a full year by the end of 2019. So yeah, it's a completely different. And I used to take a lot of supplements and medication for anxiety. I don't remember the last time I did that.
Wow. That's quite an intangible indicator. That's super
Yeah,
powerful and important.
I used to wake up on a 9 out of 10 out
Mm,
of panic, like
mhm.
just one hair away from utter panic.
That's the price you pay for not living in truth to some degree. You know, when you just have a vague idea of your finances, you fill the hole with anxiety. That's what most people do.
Yeah,
But I
and you
wanted to,
think you're productive.
yes, right. You
Worrying
get
about
busy.
it is productive. No, it's not.
Yeah, exactly. I want to go back to just a minute ago where you said, you know, if we were to lose a client, well, I have the truth. When you said that, I felt this huge relaxation in my body. And
Yeah,
it's
so
just
did
so,
I.
yes, just so beautiful. Like as we start to close here, um, from the beginning where you were operating in stories and beliefs and about how you'd like things to be, and fantasies about finance and images and all that's been more and more replaced with relaxing into the truth, which sometimes is awful, but it's always true. And that's been your orientation for years now.
Yeah, and it's if the truth isn't the foundation, good luck. Uh, Good luck. You're going to be
Because that's what
you're
you're depending on.
you're depending on that. I mean,
Yep.
we spent tens of thousands of dollars on information based on information that wasn't the truth,
Mm.
and I'm still paying for those mistakes. Like literally every month, still making payments on some of those things. Uh, and that truth starts with the business owner.
Yeah.
And like you taught me a question of like they're doing it, so where are you? Like, when I coach my other business partner or I coach people here, usually after we find something they're struggling with, I sit back and go, all right, well, they're doing that, and to some degree in some area I'm probably doing that too. I wonder where.
Yeah.
And that question, creating that space, sometimes I ask my wife, hey, I've struggled with accountability. You know that better than I do. Where am I doing that now?
Mm.
Or I met with this person today and they were struggling with financial accountability, or they were struggling with um, whatever. And I can ask a few people, am I still doing that? Or where do you think I'm doing that? Or just ask myself and start to examine, what's going on. And that, like this, so there's a part of like, sometimes you need someone else to be like, hey, there's another way to do this. Let's walk you through it. But hopefully you start to be able to do that on your own,
Mm.
and you can start to observe yourself. I think one of the keys was when you told me to grab the wisdom of the Enneagram, and I started to learn about the Enneagram, but there's like one page in there that talks about the observer and this concept that, we can actually watch ourselves change so much. Because then I got to watch how I treated employees. I got to watch the thoughts that were in my head that I didn't think I could verbalize about my relationship to our finances. And then listen to myself. And sometimes I listen to myself. I'm like, you are nuts. That
Ah.
awareness has changed. I'm now aware of this and we're never doing that again. And
Mhm.
that's stuck. And so that was a concept that I'd never really seen. To be, and you talk about this a lot. We talk about it a lot. Like, stop the tape, slow it down. This happened, and then what was the thought, and then what was the story, and what did you say, and then what did you do, and and slowing that down allowed me to find the areas where we weren't optimal. We weren't actually doing a good job, and there were many areas where we actually weren't doing a good job.
Mm. Wow. Jamie, I want to acknowledge you for your courage and your commitment to truth and your willingness to endure a whole lot of discomfort that we've only scratched the surface of in recounting today. But I've been with you this entire time. I've seen you go through
Yeah.
intense difficulty, but Bigger than the difficulty was always the meta, the ability to watch yourself that you were just talking about, and knowing that one day this pain would serve you, and that day has arrived.
I think so. And that's like the one thing I do want to say is that doesn't mean you get to a place and there's no more trials, tribulations, pain. That doesn't get to happen here. Like that's not what life is about.
Mm-hmm.
But it sure is a hell of a lot easier to deal with it when you know how you tend to, your shadow will lead you, and you're watching yourself, and you get to choose
mm-hmm.
how you react to things instead of reacting and then figuring out how to rebuild what you just destroyed.
Accept the conditions and make choices inside them.
Yeah, these are the conditions, and now what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's been great. Thank you. Like, I don't think, I don't think I could have ever gotten here without a good teacher and, and someone who, like, I've worked with, other coaches in the past. I worked with counselors in my personal life, and you had the cojones to hold me accountable. Cause I do remember a couple conversations and I was like, I hate that guy. And I'd hang up the phone and then I'd sit and process it and I'd be like, damn it, he's right. I'm still mad I'm not talking to him today. But going through that, like a lot of people don't have that. And if you're a business owner listening to this and, you're most likely struggling with something, like you need that as an owner. We're not held accountable in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so it's a huge benefit to not only have someone, and like, you never seemed worried about if you pissed me off of me, bailing. Mm-hmm. And I know probably a lot of other people do. They get pissed off when you bring something that's truthful to them. And I really appreciated that. Like there was no holding back. And that helped me see how I wasn't doing that with everybody else and how much of a gift it really is.
Yeah.
So really appreciate it. And the stuff that I've learned, the businesses will ebb and flow. Those are the conditions.
Yeah.
And we all know that if we've run businesses. How you react to it is a choice.
Amen.
Yeah. Preach on.
Yeah. So you're welcome. And thank you. It's been such a pleasure to work with someone who has this orientation toward truth, even when it's difficult, the willingness to accept those conditions, even when it's hard, even when you'd like it to be different. But you've earned all the success that you have. And I'm just really proud of you and inspired by you. And
thank you.
I can't wait to see what you'll accomplish next year and the year after that and the year after that with all the tools that you have.
Yeah. There was one more thing I wanted to say, and you kind of asked like what, there we talked about like predisposition to change. Mm-hmm. The other thing is like, I know because of that, like people change for avoid pain or seek pleasure, but most likely to avoid pain.
Usually that's bigger. Yeah.
That's bigger. And I kept thinking, okay, this get pretty painful. This could get real painful. Mm-hmm. How about I just create my own bottom right here where I'm at when I still have 20 people working for me in another business and my family's still intact. Let's make this the bottom. If this were the bottom, what does that look like? And that helped me too, because it can always be worse.
Yeah. That's a really important concept. And that's one of the really productive uses of the imagination. I talk a lot about how the mind deceives us and distracts us and everything, but of course there's good in everything. And one of the things that the mind's really useful for is imagining how much worse it actually could be and deciding, okay, let's make this the bottom. Let's really lean into how bad things are now and not let it get any worse. Because you can't do that without the mind. You can't compare without the mind.
Yeah, yeah.
So, orientation toward truth, accepting the conditions, and also having the imagination to be able to see how it could be a lot worse if you don't take action.
Yeah.
You're an inspiration to us all, Jamie.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're so
The image triad self of mine loves to hear that.
Jamie's talking about the Enneagram in case you don't know about it. It's one of the tools that I teach, and one day we'll make a course about.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like, hey, I know we're trying to wrap it up, but that was another thing. We've done personality tests for years.
Mm-hmm.
Finding one that allows you to grow and shows you how you behave in different instances has been really helpful here, but it's been tremendous in my marriage, which if you're a business owner, that's another area like you want to solidify and keep working on. So I'd encourage people to look at that too.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a powerful tool. And like you've said so many times, what's beautiful about all of these tools, and you've been speaking to it really well, is that none of them have not also applied to your life.
Oh yeah.
Speaking really eloquently to the business life balance or totality. And that's part of the reason why you've been so successful, is because you haven't even tried to compartmentalize it. You've taken these teachings and these principles in so deeply that you've worked on yourself, because you're in your business and your life, because your life is really everything. And you've changed from the inside out, not just in order to produce a result, but because truth is more important than the results. Therefore, the results follow. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, and that's we talked early on of the false idea of there's business Jamie and then there's personal Jamie.
Yeah.
No, there's just the broken, crazy, storytelling, anxious Jamie, and he expresses himself everywhere.
And isn't it a lot less work just being one person rather than having to wear those different personality uniforms?
Oh yeah. You get to focus on things that matter instead of what people you don't know and most likely don't like think about you. So yeah. But thanks for having me on. I appreciate this and would love sharing the work that I've done, that we've done together, that you've helped me with, is something that whether it's a podcast or someone just asked me how I got here, is part of the story now. So it's pretty cool. And the business success has been nice. Things are nice, and money breeds choices and security. Mm-hmm. But that's honestly not where the at home is where the biggest impacts have happened. So that's,
You mean money hasn't made you happy, but discovering your own true nature and being more yourself and having rewarding relationships is better than money?
Weird, right?
Weird. Yeah. I think there's a set of cliches about that, isn't there?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. The problems that we have, that cash, the same problems still happen. Mm-hmm. And I can find myself, and I told you before we started recording, like even today, it was in my head.
Yeah.
And the truths were different than they used to be. Like we weren't. And I could have spent all week right where I was 5 years ago. But you learn through these processes, and that time between of the freak out is much shorter than it ever was.
Yes, right. It's not about making it go away. In fact, when people try to make difficulty or anxiety or depression or errant thoughts or whatever it is go away, what they resist persists. It's about just returning, watching, seeing the truth, and returning more quickly. If you try to make it go away, it will never work.
Yeah. And what if your change in the business is you, and that changes everything? After running the business for 9 years like that, I didn't want to lose it. And it was way more than the business, about way more than the business.
What if the change in your business is you?
Yeah.
That's a powerful what if.
Needs to be a t-shirt or a bumper sticker or something.
I don't know how well it would sell, but it would be really true.
No one would buy it.
Who knows? Well, Jamie, any last thoughts before we close?
No, I think those are it. Looking at yourself seems to be so hard for so many.
Mm.
And so your work at tackling like how to help people do that is super important. And, you know, to anyone listening, you should start there. You're the foundation. Shore that up. Know what, and the truth. It's like you got to pursue truth, whether it's in your business, your relationships, whatever. What is actually true? And most of the time, like, you don't know until you start to think about it. You don't really know. So there you go.
Well said, Jamie. All right. Well, thank you so much. And this is a lot to take in for me. This is retrospective for both of us. And again, I appreciate your courage, your commitment to truth, your fortitude, because you've been through a lot. And I know you'll continue to enjoy all that you've earned.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.